Well, ladies and gentlemen, so welcome to a special video today again. And today is a subject that, is widely talked about, widely discussed. Everybody wants to know, which is about accidents. How can you see accidents in astrology, especially Vedic astrology? And this can be anything. This can be car accidents. This can be accidents through machinery. This can be, falling from the second floor. This could be accident through drowning. Anything which happens suddenly, unexpectedly, that can harm your body, that's what we're going to talk about today. And obviously, if you do not know what your planetary alignments are, in order for you to know if you ever ran into accident before, or if it could be happening, so you can protect yourself, you can see what's going on. For that, check out the links here and check out my full astrological report, including my books, Astrology, Conjunction, and Aspects at the Speed of Light, including my new magazine on Destiny and Career. So on this here, you will get your report, especially with option 4, where you will see all your planetary alignments, all the signs, nakshatras, everything that we need to know in order for to see how and when an accident can occur. And remember, I don't do any negative readings. So after this video, if you want to email me and say, hey, when my next accident is going to be, or when my previous accident is, I don't do negative readings. My whole thing is I'm all about showing you the light. I'm about showing you the potential that you have. There's too many out there, astrologers who are, will show you the dark side, the light side, or all the dark side. I don't do that. My simply life philosophy, I especially made a decision back in 2008, especially through one of my very prominent guru, my secret guru, never ever do any negative reading for anybody, especially the way my horoscope is. Okay, so just remember that. So, accidents is a very complicated subject, and this subject can have literally 5 different parts to this video, because there are hundreds and hundreds of combinations regarding accidents. I remember, and the reason why I'm especially making this video, because I did my research last year. If you remember, on my Facebook page, I'm like, hey, if you have ever been into car accidents, send me your information, because I don't really run in through every day in car accidents. I don't really care for looking into it, but I slowly did my research, slowly, and then finally last month, I'm like, okay, we'll be making a video on this soon. And especially, Joni Patri really kind of opened up this eye about looking into accidents, looking into any kind of a deal happening in horoscope, because she's a master of transits. If you want to learn transits of planets, and especially the magic of outer planets, Uranus and Neptune, Joni Patri is the person for that. And when she sent me her 2 books last year, I read them cover to cover. And from there, I learned so much information that I never really learned anywhere. So yeah, we got to give a big thanks to Joni Patri, and she'll be here in February to talk about Uranus, Neptune, and all the outer planets and how they coordinate in Vedic astrology, especially through their transits. So when we're looking at accidents, and especially most commonly, we'll talk about car accidents, motorcycle accidents. These things happen, especially when we have to analyze the Lord of the 1st house, which is your body. Lord of the 4th house, which is conveniences, vehicles. We have to see the Lord of the 8th house, which is sudden events, sudden things just happening. A volcano can erupt right now, and it's a sudden event. So accident is sudden. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be getting into an accident tonight. Okay, yeah, let me prepare for it. No, it just happens suddenly. So that's 8th house. Then 12th house we see as a house of loss. You lost something, or you ended up in a hospital due to an accident. So 12th house becomes significantly important. But you also have to remember the 8th from the 8th house, which is the 3rd house. 3rd house is a mild malefic house, because apparently it is 8th from the 8th. Now, many people use 6th house as well as a house of accidents, but that can only be used in a certain events. That is when your 4th Lord is in the 6th house, meaning the house that controls your vehicles, or the significator of vehicles, which is Venus, if it's in the 6th house. Then the time periods related to these things will bring about accidents. And how do you see it with these things? Well, you're going to have to use the most important timetable in Vedic astrology, which is Mahadasha, the Vimshotri Mahadashas, Antradashas, and Paryantradashas. And besides these combinations that I've told you, you also have to look at the divisional charts, like Namansha chart and then Trimsamsa chart, the D30 chart, which is a chart of misfortunes, diseases, just landing in any kind of a misfortune. An accident is a misfortune. So you want to look at those charts, especially you want to look at the 6th and the ascendant of the Trimsamsha. First, 6th and the 8th of the Trimsamsha will give you a very important clue. But what triggers an accident is not just the Mahadashas, Antradashas and Paryantradashas, but it's the transits. And the most important transits that you want to remember, and this is a very easy category to remember, transits of tamasic planets. That's it. You know how there are Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic? Tamasic are Mars, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. Transits of these planets also play an important role in looking for accidents. Okay, so remember, 1st, 3rd, 4th, 8th, and 12th house mainly. Then we are looking for transits of Mars, Saturn, Rahu, Ketu. Then we're looking at divisional charts, the D9 and the Trimsamsa chart, because D9 really gives you the confirmation of everything. Then at the same time, we want to see the transiting planets of the current Mahadasha, Antradasha, and Paryantradasha that you're going through right now. So yes, it does sound complicated. And if you're new to this, if you're watching this for the first time, you probably won't even like this video. You first have to learn the astrology 101. What are houses? What are signs? What are transits? What are divisional charts? Which obviously you can find through my books on the website or just all my YouTube videos that I've made so far. So when I was talking about the Tamasic planet, why are they important? Because Tamasic planet bring us hurdles in our life. They bring challenges in our life. And Mars is most important because Mars is a karka of accidents. He's a karka of injuries, bleeding. Then Saturn represents misfortunes as well. Especially why? Because Saturn is the karka of the 8th house. What is karka? Meaning significator. Doesn't matter what planet rules your 8th house. Okay? The karka of that is also important. So karka of that planet and its transit is important. Transit of Mars is important because Mars is a karka of accidents. So this is why these two planets become very important regarding their transit. Okay? And then Rahu, Ketu become important because they're the planet of upheaval and sudden events. Rahu and Ketu, if you really understand truly, okay, and this is something I learned from Ernest Willem, in higher divisional charts, Rahu and Ketu become one. You know those like Trimsamsa chart, and there's other charts where Rahu and Ketu become important. Anytime where you go in, D30 and D45, D60, all these places, you will find them, they might be conjunct. And that's because the higher you go into the consciousness realm, the spiritual realm, everything becomes one. Rahu, Ketu become one. They're literally of one energy. We have to separate them in this three-dimensional realm to understand them, but they're really one thing. They're both malefic planets. They're both bringing us sudden events. They're both misdirecting us in different directions. So that's what their transit become important. But how do you see their transit? Well, this is where the magic comes into play. You want to see the transit of especially Mars and Saturn either over the lords whose Mahadasha, Antradasha, and Paryantradasha that you're going through, and especially when you run into the time period of Mahadasha of the 1st house, 4th house, 8th house, and 12th house. Any one of these four whose Maha and Antradasha you could be running into, that can cause accidents when Saturn and Mars are transiting over these planets or over these houses. So if Mars is transiting your 4th house, Saturn is transiting your 8th house, and at the same time you're going through the Mahadasha of the 4th house, Antradasha of the 8th house, and perhaps Paryantradasha of the 8th house, or Paryantradasha of the 1st house. So your body, vehicle, and sudden events are being triggered now. Then you want to confirm that in the mantra chart. And we will do the example. I will show you the examples from my research, how they were playing beautifully in there. You want to confirm that in the mantra chart. See exactly where Saturn, Mars, Rahu, Ketu were transiting. Who were they transiting over? Were these 4 planets? See, I'm going to make it easy again. Are these 4 planets transiting over your 1st, 4th, 8th, and 12th house? And especially through their transit, are they going over or do they aspect your 1st, 4th, 8th, and 12th Lord? 6th house, we also want to look at 6th house. If your 4th Lord or Venus are sitting in the 6th house, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, Ketu somehow aspect the 6th house where these 2 entities could be placed. That can trigger sudden problem regarding the 4th house. Because 6th house is really diseases, misfortune, facing enemies. 6th house represents obstacles. So your vehicle or the karka of vehicle Venus may have run into an obstacle. So 6th house can be triggered over that. But then, once we realize the birth chart and then the mantra chart with these, placements and time periods and transits, we also want to look at the transit of the current Mahadasha and Antradasha. Because this is especially when, Joni Patri talked about, where if you're going through Mahadasha of, let's say, Jupiter and Antradasha of Saturn, then transit of Jupiter and Saturn and their placement become pivotal during that Maha and Antradasha. And the houses that rule become very important because they will be activated. So let's say, I'll give you a short example. Let's say somebody is a Cancer ascendant and they're running through Jupiter Mahadasha and Saturn Antradasha. Do you think this Mahadasha and Antradasha can cause some sort of an accident regardless of their placement? We don't even know where they're placed right now. But can they? Yes, they can. Because Jupiter rules the 6th house of illnesses, diseases, running into problems. Then Saturn rules the 8th house of accidents and sudden events. And Saturn rules the 7th house, which is the Marka house. Marka's houses are literally death-inflicting houses where you just feel like either you're dead or you just feel like you're dead. So just from these 2, we know, okay, Saturn, Jupiter, okay, could be something happening here. But then you want to see where they're transiting right now. Is Saturn going over the 8th house? Is Saturn going over the 6th house? Are Jupiter and Saturn going over Venus and the 4th Lord? Are Saturn, Jupiter going over the Ascendant Lord and the 8th Lord or the 8th house? So you see how complicated this becomes. Because although we were only using 4 houses to really determine the accident, so much things we have to go. We know the houses, then we have to see the Mahadasha and Antradasha, Pariyantradasha to see if they give us any clue about something misfortune happening. Then we have to see the transit of the Tamasic planet. Then we have to see the transit of the current Mahadasha and Antradasha lords who could be causing the event to happen. And we want to see who they're going over. And this is why, for me especially, it becomes just, when I look at a chart, I'm not really interested in looking at these things because then I have to open up a different screen to look at what the transits were happening at the time. Some astrologers just know what transits were happening at what year. Okay, those are the astrologers that will tell you, hey, you must have gotten into accident in this time. But for me, as you know, me being, semi-dyslexic, I just don't really handle too much detailed information. For me, it's about the broad strokes. However, after I did my studies and as, I went through all these books and especially looking at the transit magic of Joni, that's where I realized, okay, wow, this is what's happening again. And I'm going to show you 3-4 examples. Then comes outer planets, especially Uranus. Uranus is also the karka of accident. Uranus transiting over Venus, the 8th house, the 1st Lord, while supporting through Maha and Antradasha can also cause. Or just the transit of Uranus can cause, accidents. So this is something interesting that I also noticed in my research. But let's look at examples of what I'm really trying to talk to you about. Okay? And I will repeat it again. So I will repeat it again. The first thing you want to do is look at the Mahadasha and Antradasha. Let's make it simple. Look at the Mahadasha and Antradasha. Are Mahadasha and Antradasha saying anything regarding the accident? Are you going through the Mahadasha of the 4th house, the ascendant, the 12th house, the 6th or 8th house even? So we know, let's say you go through the Mahadasha of the 8th house. So it shows that, okay, something sudden could be happening in this time period. Then you go through the Antradasha of the 4th house. Okay, so now you know sudden events and 4th house is being activated. Then you can narrow it down to Paryantradasha. Paryantradasha could be of, again, the 1st, 4th, 8th and 12th house. But how do you determine that Paryantradasha part? For that you look at the transit. Okay, the Karka of accidents for transit, Mars, where is he? Is he going over Venus? Is he going over the 4th house? Is he going in the 8th house? Is he going over the ascendant? Is he going over the moon? Because usually whenever Mars goes over moon, people get hurt. They bleed, something happens. Then you want to look at Saturn. Okay, where's Saturn transiting now? Is Saturn aspecting the Venus, aspecting the 4th house, conjunct Venus in current transit, conjunct the 4th Lord in current transit, going over the 8th house, going over the ascendant Lord, going in the 12th house and aspects the ascendant Lord? Then once you have somehow confirmed this picture, look at it in the Namansha chart. Because again, we determine things in Namansha. We want to see Raj Yogas, Dhan Yogas, Arishta Yogas happening in the Namansha charts. And then what we do, we go to another divinal chart called Trimsamsha. In Trimsamsha, you want to see where are these Saturn, Mars, and especially Tamasic planet transits are happening. Are they going over the ascendant Lord of your Trimsamsha? Are they going in the 6th house? Are they going over the 4th house of the Trimsamsha, 8th house of the Trimsamsha? These trigger points will again show you, okay, confirm, something must have happened. But most of the time you get into an accident but you don't get hurt. How does that determine? Well, that's where you have to see the ascendant, the body. Is the body safe? Is the body in really damaged or not? You want to see, is the ascendant getting the blessings of Jupiter? Is the ascendant strongly placed in its own sign, Multrikon sign, or in conjunct in a Neech Bhang? And then in the Mancha chart, is it receiving benefic aspect? Is it receiving the protection? And so this is where you can see, okay, the body will be saved. Although you got into an accident, body will be saved. You will not go away. Yet sometimes fatalities happen because the ascendant, the body, was so fragile that when this sudden event occurs, the frequency kind of got messed up, your soul escaped and you died. That was the time you were supposed to go. So these are the steps that you want to understand. And then I'm now going to show you how I saw them in the charts that I saw them in. Okay, let's go. Okay guys, so as you see in this birth chart that has also the D9 chart on the right hand side, which is the Namansha chart that I was talking about. So this person, she sent me her husband's information last year showing that he got into an accident in 2001 and it was Saturn, Mercury, Mars period. So why is it that Saturn, Mercury, Mars period are showing us accident? Well, first of all, does Saturn Mahadasha gives us any clue about some sort of an upheaval? Well, in the birth chart, if you notice, Saturn rules the 3rd house, which is the Bhavat Bhavam of the 8th house. And Saturn rules that house with his Multrikon sign. So becomes really, really strong regarding giving some sort of a mild malefic effect, okay? But in the Namansha chart, Saturn becomes a functional malefic because it rules the 8th house with his sign of Aquarius. His Multrikon sign rules the actual 8th house of, sudden events and accidents. Then Mercury here becomes the Antradasha Lord for accidents is something that I actually should have talked about, that the sign of Aries, and especially sign of Aries, Scorpio, and Aquarius are very karmic sign, and especially Aries is in a way, tamasic sign. Because this is a sign that kind of not only has the fire in it, but the aggressiveness in it and the impulsiveness in it. Aries is all about just suddenly jumping into things, not thinking about it. Suddenly just going out there and doing something. Whether it's a bully, a fighter, a policeman, they're actually seen from Aries, the original first house. So we can see that Mercury and conjunct Sun, the hot planet in the sign of Aries, can trigger an event. And especially in the Namansha chart, Mercury rules the 12th house of hospitals. And again, the third house with his Multragon sign, the 8th from the 8th. Then the reason why Mars Paryantra Dasha shows us the accident, because Mars is debilitated in the 8th house. And Mars is a ruler of Mercury. And this is why Mercury Antradasha came into play, because Mercury's dispositor, Mars, was in the 8th house, ready to cause some sort of a accident, some sort of a really bad event. And if you look at the transits, as I wrote here, that Saturn and Rahu were transiting over Venus in the birth chart. So during this time, Saturn and Rahu were both in the sign of Taurus, transiting over Venus. Venus is in the 6th house. What did I tell about 6th house? We use the 6th house when either the 4th lord or Venus, the Karka of vehicles, is in the 6th house, or the Karka of the 4th house moon. So Venus here is getting the transits of Saturn and Rahu over it. And then Mars was transiting over Mars in the sign of Cancer during this time. And Ketu was transiting the 12th house and aspected the 4th house of vehicles and conveniences in the birth chart. Then in the Namansha chart, if you look at the transits, first of all, the Mahadasha Saturn Lord is debilitated in the 10th house and is conjunct Mercury, the 3rd and 12th Lord. So 8th, 3rd and 12th Lord are conjunct in the 10th house with malefic Rahu. So again, we see something will be happening to his reputation, something with his image to the world. And then the Paryantra Dasha Mars is in the 6th house of, problems and obstacles. But the transits, if you see, Mars was transiting the ascendant and aspected the 8th house of sudden events. And Mars was aspecting the 6th Lord Jupiter in the 7th house. And Saturn aspected the 8th house from the 11th house. And Rahu in the Namansha chart aspected the 6th Lord Jupiter again. So this is why we saw the accident happen in this time period for this person. Now we're going to look at another example. So here, let's look at the second example. And I know I wanted to do the third and fourth example, but hey, with two daughters, yelling and ready to go to sleep, I'm trying to finish this as quickly as possible. So in this chart, she was 5 years old at the time when she got into a car accident in July 1995, which was a Rahu Mahadasha, Jupiter Antradasha, and Rahu Paryantradasha. So why would that accident occur? Well, she's going through Rahu Mahadasha, and Rahu is conjunct Venus in the 7th house. And Rahu Ketu, no matter what, we know they're going to bring sudden events, regardless of their placement. So not only they can misdirect us and misguide us into driving on the wrong day, but Rahu is conjunct the Karka of vehicles, Venus. The reason why Jupiter came into play, because Jupiter not only rules the 6th house of obstacles, illnesses, but it's in the 12th house of hospitals. She landed herself in a hospital after accident. And 8th Lord, Saturn, aspects Jupiter in the 12th house. And Saturn aspects Moon, the Karka of the 4th house in the 8th house. And Mars is conjunct Saturn in the 6th house. Mars also looks at Jupiter. And Mars, Saturn, obviously in the 6th house can, their aspect and create this war zone. But look at the transits. Saturn aspect on Venus during transit in the birth chart. So Saturn was transiting the 7th house. The 8th Lord went over the Karka of vehicles, caused an accident. Mars aspect was on the 8th house and the ascendant Lord Moon during this time, because Mars was transiting the 2nd house in the sign of Leo. So birth chart confirmed that. Now look at the Samsha chart. During this time, Saturn was transiting the ascendant of the Samsha, where Venus again was sitting in the ascendant. the Karka of vehicles. Then Mars was transiting the 8th house. And Mars aspected Mars and Moon in the 11th house. So blood came out. And this is the reason, this is how you can synchronize and see. And especially Rahu was going over Jupiter in the birth chart during this time, and Ketu was going in the 6th house. And in the Namantra chart, Rahu and Ketu were in the axis of 6th and 12th house, where Jupiter and Saturn were again. So this is how you can see. You know, if you look deep enough, if you look into detail enough, if you want to, you'll see how accident could occur and could not occur. Now, was the person safe? Of course. You know, so this is how we would synchronize it. Now, I would go over Trim Samsha too, but again, I'm such a time constraint and I can only edit up to less than like 30 minutes. So I'm trying to crunch this as much as possible. Okay. So guys, I hope this has helped and given some insights into accidents. And again, if you're new to my channel, subscribe below. And if you want to know about your planetary placements, my books, consultations, for that, check out the links on the left. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.